All right, Florida, Auburn. Let's kind of dive into that matchup. The last time that they played, Saturday, February 8th, Florida went into Neville Arena, put a big run on Auburn to end the second half, headed into the break up by 10, and went on to win 90 to 81. Walter Clayton Jr. had 19 points and 9 assists. He looked like a first team All American. I think that was the point when we all kind of realized, hey, you know what? Like, this isn't. It's not a fluke. Like, this dude is an absolute monster. Elijah Martin did not play. Janai Broome had 18 points, 11 boards, and 6 assists. But it took until about midway through the second half for Auburn to really kind of wake up in that one. And that was the game where I think all of us kind of said, well, is this really the Auburn that we thought they were going to be? Like, is this really? Can we pencil this team into a national title game no matter what happens? And that was the first time that we saw some cracks in the armor, as you will. Fanta, what do you make of this matchup? What do you make of the way that Todd Golden's team beat them the first time, and whether or not they'll have a chance to do the same thing again?
Well, they beat him the first time because Auburn at some point was going to have a hiccup. And Auburn did not defend that day at all. Couldn't defend. This game comes down to complementary shot making. Like, if you're Florida, you better stop to Hot Bedford, man. If you let that kid get cooking, it's like his threes are worth 4 or 5 points. That whole team feeds off his energy. You know, he's got that type of nightmare fuel, KD Johnson type of but on steroids because he does it so consistently. Chad Baker Mazzara, Miles Kelly, Denver Jones. You know, that for Florida, the game is going to be won by who can get more stops. And Florida has struggled at times to do that. I thought Florida, for a good portion of the game against Texas Tech, got exposed big time. How many times did Texas Tech get to the rim in that game?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm watching the game. I'm like, how do you not have an answer right now? If you let Auburn do that, man, you're going to lose by 15 points. I think Auburn's got it coming to them. I do. I think Florida can win this game because Walter is Mr. Clutch.
Man.
If I'm Florida, I'm like, let me get this to 4 minutes and let it be a close game because I got the best close. I got the scariest guy in this tournament right now. But I'm fascinated to see what we see from Florida's front line in this game against Auburn's front line. But I think whatever Bruce Pearl looked at, you got to think he's pulling up the film again from Neville Arena to say, fellas, this is what happens when you take plays off against this Florida team. We're too good for you to be taking plays off. You got to come engage defensively. I feel Auburn will.
Man, it's such a quality matchup, but this seems to be the kind of game with all the emotions. There's some familiarity between both teams. Walter Clayton's been amazing. You almost wonder, like, is the horseshoe that's been stuck up his hind parts going to fall out? Because some of these shots that he's been making, like
a horseshoe that's been stuck
in his hind parts, is going to fall out. Because he made one, like he jumped and did a 180, then faded away and made a 3.
Unbelievable.
To ice the Texas Tech game. Auburn has not had that kind of sequence needed. I wonder if, is Florida going to be able to rattle off one more like that? And I feel like they've kind of tested the waters a little bit, beating UConn by 2. It just feels like they can just make you move. They can make you move. And here's the good part. Auburn can't move. How does Janai Broome play ball screen defense against Walter Clayton? Because I think, that knee, whenever he came down, sprained his knee, pulled back his knee, and then an ankle went, and then his wrist was gone. Or is he going to be able to guard in ball screen situations?
Done.
Yeah, he was done and then came back out. So, there's a little bit of a Paul Pierce situation.
You ever had that as a player?
What's that?
You take a fall and you're like, shoot, I'm done in this game.
There's only been one time where I knew I was done. And that's when I ripped my hamstring my last year. That was the only time I was like, yep, that'll do it.
Wow.
That was the only time. But it's how is he going to be able to play against Walter Clayton, who's quicker than a wet fart? Like, that's what I'm worried about.
And Walter Clayton is one of the best point guards in college basketball against drop. Like, you can't play drop coverage against them. And that's what Auburn wants to do with Janai Broome. Now, if they want to switch that up a little bit, Texas Tech, Maryland did it in the first half where they started stringing them out more instead of just playing a deep drop. And that worked for about a half. And then Maryland realized their coach was leaving for Villanova and decided that they were not going to show up for the second half of that game. I don't expect that to happen with Auburn. But that's the key to the matchup for me is how are they going to handle those ball screens and those DHOs and some of that zoom action that they like to put Walter Clayton Jr. in, because when he's coming off of that, if he gets going, like he's the head of the snake, man, you got to slow that down.